webinars that we have done in the last 4 years. And this whole series started as COVID was setting in. EGROW Foundation is a research-based policy advisory think tank, and we
Mhm.
believe that we need to, before making any policy advice, have a thorough understanding and grounding in the research. It is with that very objective that we have been undertaking research, but as COVID set in, we shifted to, in a big way, to the webinars, bringing the best minds from across the world to come and speak to us on contemporary issues, domestic and global. Under the presidency of G20 of India, we did three. We did 11 on new international economic order. We did 6 on women empowerment, and we did 6 on climate. We have also been very fortunate. 3 Nobel laureates have already come and spoken at EGROW, and the 4th Nobel laureate, who has got the Nobel Prize for institutions in 2024, is coming and speaking to us in March. The second Nobel laureate of the current year will be speaking to us in February, but the date has yet to be confirmed. So we have been very privileged to have even Nobel laureates come and speak to us at EGROW Foundation. Now, bond issues and bond prices and bond markets is something very pedagogic. And we not only bring contemporary issues, we also bring in geopolitical situation analysis, and we also bring in academic discussions. For example, today we have the bond markets, and then we are going to have on inflation target Dr. Lipsky from Brookings next week, week after, not next week. So we have been bringing in a combination of public policy, geopolitics, academics, and also bringing in any other contemporary issue that would be of interest to us, the country, and our core members. To speak on bond market, we have today a dear friend of mine whom I had met. I had heard his presentation and really liked his presentation when he did it recently in India. I'm referring to Osamu Yamamoto. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Unison Capital Management Private Limited, based in Singapore. He is in charge. Today, of course, he's speaking to us from Japan. I think he's taken the advantage of a weekend. So, Dr. Yamamoto is in charge of Unison Capital Group's sustainability-focused investment activities in the Indo-Pacific region. He just mentioned to me that he travels extensively and frequently visits India also. In his 23 years of private equity career at Unison, he built an extensive network with Japanese corporates and has had various spin-out investments. Recently, he is leading Unison's incubate and growth strategy in India, and he is also a board member of Pacific Pension and Investment Institute, a premier global community of pensions and investment professionals. Dr. Yamamoto holds a BA in economics from Keio University, an MBA from the University of Chicago Graduate School of Business, and PhD in industrial engineering and management from the Tokyo Institute of Technology. With this, I invite you, Dr. Yamamoto, to please share your research with us.
Thank you, first of all. Thank you, Dr. Singh, for having me today at this webinar. It is my absolute privilege to be here with you today. So today I'm going to talk about India and the global bond indexes. This has some implications for your financial flows and spillover. Dr. Singh kindly introduced to me, I'm a private equity investor. I'm doing this private equity investment more than quarter of the century, and currently my focus is Indo-Japan market. So that is that I hope is giving me some credential to talk about the Indian market from the perspective of investors. So Vivek, can you move on? So starting point is this chart. So everybody knows that JP Morgan, the bond index, they decided to include India after a long discussion. So global bond index emerging market is the JP Morgan's index name, and which has AUM asset under management of around US dollar 236 billion. And as this chart shows, India will be representing 10% of this global bond indexes. So the question is this good news? Is this bad news? So let's move on. Vivek, can you? Yes, thank you very much. So my point is very clear. In short, from the capital flow perspective, it is true that India will get somewhere around the US dollar 23.6 billion from this decision. Because as I said, this JP Morgan's global bond index has AUM of US dollar 236 billion, and India will represent 10%. So the 236 billion times 10%, it's US dollar 23.6 billion. So this capital flow will take place between the time frame of June 2024 and March 2025. However, which is good news, right? However, from a medium to longer term perspective, the most important benefit for India would accrue in the form of lower borrowing cost for the government. And that's the kind of the usual discussion. I found this in your research paper of the institution who analyzed the mid to longer term perspective. So their argument goes like FPI held only 1.4% of G6 as of March 23. This is significantly lower than the median of 13.4% seen in case of most ASEAN plus 3 nations. The share of FPI ownership in G6 could potentially jump to 4.1 to 4.9% by end of March 25 if the other index owners also make an announcement to include India in their respective bond indexes. Last, while this would still render India as one amongst the lowest degree of foreign ownership of local currency sovereign bonds, it would help leapfrog the FPI share to closer to 5%, one of the erstwhile guiding threshold that the RBI has used while allocating investment limits for FPIs that currently remain significantly underutilized. This is a kind of a usual analysis of the medium term to longer term effect of this decision by the bond index, global bond index, operators. The reason why I'm here is that I would like to challenge this conventional wisdom. So first, let me go to this chart. Thank you, Vivek. This is the total size of a fixed income market globally. So in short, global fixed income market is very big, very big. The total size is 133 trillion USD. And out of that, 45% is from the US has a giant lion share of 45%. as you see, the actual number is 51.3 trillion US dollar. And everybody knows that this is, part of the reason US has a dominance in the global capital flow. I'm originally from Japan, and Japan represents in this chart around 11 trillion USD. So Japan has a significant fixed income market, yes, and significantly bigger than India's fixed income market, which is around 1.3 trillion US dollar right now. So this is the starting point of my counter argument. Okay, so India has very small fixed income market. Is this good news, bad news? It is very good news from our perspective. Let's move on to the next chart. Why this is a good news? As a Japanese, I can tell you this from my heart. Japan has 11 trillion US dollar of a fixed income market, but the price of that is debt to GDP ratio. Our debt to GDP ratio is 255.2, and it's worse too globally. Only country that is worse number for this debt to GDP ratio is Sudan only, and we're the worst too. And I, as an investor and as a business person, I have been observing this phenomena over the last 35 years. And this is not something, and as a Japanese, I can have a huge pride on. This is a significant issue for the longer term sustainability of the Japanese fiscal policy. Whereas India, your debt to GDP ratio is only 81.6%. And you learned the lessons from all those fluctuations in the FX market of their INR. And as a consequence of that, today India has a very significant FX reserve, and your debt to equity ratio is well under control. So this is good news. But at the same time, it is your political decision. It is your policy decision. That this is my point. Not to make your fixed income grow. Let me repeat. It is your choice not to have a gigantic fixed income market as of today. Because with this kind of a debt to GDP ratio, and also I'm going to talk about the yearly capital flow, and your the debt to annual budget is very, very low. It's just 7-8% kind of thing. In that case, you will not have a big fixed income market next 10 years. Let's move on. So that's in your conventional wisdom of is this a good news or bad news, or that JP Morgan decided to include your government bond as one of their global bond index products, who end up owning your government bond from this global index is has a very important implication for your future goals. My point is 23.6 billion US dollar is too small. Too small for what? Too small for the asset owners, public pensions, to allocate their capital in a meaningful manner to the Indian fixed income market. That's my point. So once again, I repeat, as an entity, JP Morgan bond index only has 236 billion US dollar as an AUM. which alone is not very big. And 10% of that is just $24 billion US dollar, which is way, way too small from the viewpoint of asset owners. By asset owners, I mean public pension funds. Japan has the world's largest public pension fund. Its name is GPIF, Government Pension Investment Fund. That's GPIF. It has 2.3 trillion US dollar AUM. So I'm going to, with this slide and using this slide and the next slide, I'm going to explain the situation of the asset owners. So this chart explains that, where they are, public pension funds. It's basically in North America, in Europe, and Asia Pacific. And by Asia Pacific, by far the largest is the Japanese market, the Japanese pension fund, because Japan is an older society. Your average age of your society is 26, 27. Ours is 48. So we end up having a huge pension asset accumulated in our public pension fund. So that's why North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific has a big pension funds. And the total AUM of the top 300 pension funds is US dollar 20.6 trillion, which is a gigantic number. Let's move on. So this is a rather, what can I say, muddy chart. Sorry about that. But this is exactly the allocation of the Japanese public pension fund that I referred to, which is GPIF, Government Pension Investment Fund. Right now, this is my favorite question. Under their 2.3 trillion US dollar AUM, what kind of allocation do they have as a GPIF for India fixed income? The answer is 0%. Why? Because India's fixed income market, as I showed you, is too small for the pension fund like them. And because global index like products like JP Morgan's, it's also very small, 236 billion. So there will no way that they can meaningfully allocate their asset under management to those products. And the same goes true. GPIF is by far the largest, but North America pensions, it's US or Canada, or GIC, Government Investment Corporation of Singapore, Australia's Super, to name few. Those are the representative, very, very well-known public pension funds, but they're also very big. So that, as a consequence of that, there will be almost zero allocation to that JP Morgan bond index from their AUM. So who's going to buy that bond index? It's hedge fund. It's hedge fund only. So as a policymaker, you have to be careful, because going forward, this bond index will give hedge fund to try to arbitrage the bond index and the real, Indian government bond. So that is always happening in Japan. Our Japanese government bond is under attack from the hedge fund many times. And this is the beginning of your, getting attacked by the hedge fund. I'm not worried about it, because your, the debt to equity ratio, your balance sheet, as well as your annual budget, very sound. Your fundamental economic growth is very sound. So there's no way that hedge fund can win in the long term, but be cautious because they will attack from that alley. So that's the, from a practitioner's perspective, That is the implication of your government bond to be included in the bond index, like that. My point is, once again, you would like to be allocated. You would like to welcome longer term investor like GPIF. But for that, your fixed income market is too small. That's the message. Let's move on. So this is a kind of a typical chart that many of the Indian conferences I encounter. This is one of the way of showing the world that India has huge capital needs. To do what? In this case, this is green transition. So we had a COP29, and India has some very clear commitment for the net zero, and you are going to need a lot of capital to make that green transition happen. And in many cases, it's a huge amount of capital needs that we are talking about. In this case, it's 1.3 trillion US dollar, and it's blah 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 blah. So there's lots of versions like this. But my point is how India would like to finance this huge capital needs. Surely it's not from the alley of issuing lots of government bonds. No. That's what we did as a Japanese, and we ended up having a 255.8% debt to GDP ratio. And you learn from us. And so that's not the path I know that India would not do going forward. But in that case, what the instrument and what kind of capital flow you would like to use to finance this gigantic capital needs for the next 10 to 20 years? That's my question. Let's move on. Since I'm a private equity investor, I'm naturally biased. But my point is this. India is going to have a big private asset market. Private asset includes not just the private equity. It should include, infrastructure. It should include private debt. But those private assets, private asset class, I would say, would be a very good source for India to finance that gigantic capital needs that I just covered. Through this private asset class, you can attract many of the longer term assets. People like GPIF would like to look at your private asset opportunity. The reason GPIF has zero exposure to your fixed income market is, as if you can recall, your fixed income market is too small compared to what? Compared to the global fixed income market, which is the size of 133 trillion USD. But your private asset market is becoming bigger and will become much bigger. And India has a lot of very good manager in the private asset class. One of them is your NIIF, National Investment and Infrastructure Fund. I have lots of friends there, and they are super professional, and their reputation is very good. So my suggestion to you is that this private asset class, whether it's private equity, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's private debt, it's very important for you to do what? To finance your longer term capital needs. So next chart is my last chart. Thank you. So thank you very much. So this is my last chart. So 4 points. While India's inclusion in global bond index would add a new dimension of India's appeal as a destination for foreign investment, India's bond market is too small from the viewpoint of global pension funds. We call them asset owners to allocate their AUM. Second point, the long-term nature of global pension fund allocation, as opposed to the short-term nature of asset managers like hedge funds, is the reason why India should welcome asset allocation from global asset owners, pension funds. Assuming GOI sticks to the path of fiscal consolidation and target a fiscal deficit target of 5.4% of GDP, which should give global investors confidence, by the way, it will take longer time for India to have meaningful share in the global bond market. My last point, India needs an alternative path to attract global asset owners' AUM allocation. Alternative asset classes like infrastructure, private equity, private debt have special meaning from this perspective for India. So I stop here. And Dr. Singh, this is end of my presentation. And for the remainder of my time, I would like to have a Q&A with the participant, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this excellent presentation. And there has been a discussion going on in our country with this index getting into the JP Morgan, what implications it has for the Indian economy and what implications it has for the Indian markets. So I really want to thank you for bringing this all in. We are open to questions. Anybody wants to raise a question, please raise your hand. We'll be happy to accommodate a question. My own question would be, as you mentioned, the American market is really very large. And I think it's going to continue to dominate the market. So this is quite apparent. Indian market to that extent is not that large. As you mentioned, hardly 1%. Now, over the period, as you know, we are into the demographic dividend. That implies we have a very young population. You mentioned the average age, whereas in Japan it is 48. Obviously, for next 20 years, this demographic phase is going to last. Now, in the market, as you again mentioned, pension funds play a very prominent role. Now, obviously, our pension funds are not that large, and even if they go, given the size of the economy and size of the people that are here, I think this is India's share in the overall market will always continue to be small. Would that be a right assumption?
Yes.
Yeah. So therefore, then does it imply that this will not have a very big impact on the Indian market?
Which will not have a big impact on Indian market. So let me understand your question clearly.
So I was wondering when we are going to enter the bonds market, the government securities market, and most of them are operating through the pension funds even now.
Yes. You mean the Indian pension funds, right?
Yes, the Indian pension funds.
Right.
So they are not going to be major players in the global market as I see now.
No, not at all.
Not
They
at
are too
all.
small. They are just
They're
too
too
small.
small for the time being, right?
No. But they are the very important buyer of your fixed income domestically.
Right.
Yes, because it's INR based fixed income, and of course, your pension fund, however young they are, their asset allocation should be 50% fixed income, for example. In that case, the very safe instrument is your government bond. So it's natural that your pension fund will be the buyer of Indian global Indian fixed income products. Yes, but my point is your fixed income market is very small, and your pension fund is very small. That's my point.
I'm not, yeah, in a way, it is also very good that the government is following fiscal prudence. That is,
Yes,
of
which is
course,
very good thing. Which
very
is very
good,
good.
which is a very good thing. But then the
Yes.
market size continues to be very small. I'm not very sure though, because my feeling is as the country grows, the
Hmm.
investment requirements are going to go up. And
Yes.
the of course, at the central government data, the fiscal
Yes.
deficit is in control, state governments is control, but there is a thought in the country that we will be asking our municipal corporations
Hmm.
to also start floating bonds. What percentage would that be? How big the numbers would be? We are still not very sure. But that could
Hmm.
be another alternate source of financing growth. And those are again going to be fixed. Um, and therefore, I think they'll either take the shape of government securities bond, and even if they take private placement, I would say that market to some extent can increase, but the numbers could still be very small. Now, which are the other big players that you would anticipate in next 10 years or 20 years to come in, other than
Hmm.
Japan and other than America?
Yes.
China?
China. Yes. China is now a very big, dependence on the, fiscal deficit. They are issuing lots of bonds now. So therefore, China's fixed income market is very big, but their fiscal situation is not that prudent compared to yours. So short answer, yes, China's fixed income market, as you can see in my chart, is very big now.
And they're expected to expand further.
Yes.
Do
So
you
for
ex-
that, yeah, go ahead. So, sorry.
do you expect the Japanese market to shrink?
It's really, I have to blame Dr. Keynes for this.
Because the
The
Japanese
answer is,
government bonds, the JGBs,
uh-huh.
they have been
There's
very, very
under
significantly.
the yeah, the combination of fiscal deficit and democracy is a worst combination. So if you want to keep your power, you have to keep, promising to the Japanese people that you do this, and the consequence of that is easy bond policy. So short answer is no. Our JGB market will not shrink.
But I thought the JGB market increased extensively. One of the reason was the lost decades in Japan. And
Yes.
therefore the bond market and the government had to finance its deficit through the market. But now that the economy seems to be improving and the economic reforms beginning to show some results, you still think that Japanese market will continue to be the way it is? On the other hand, if you look into the recent statements made by Elon Musk and the
Hmm.
American administration, they have
Hmm.
also been saying that they are under too much of debt and that debt
Yes.
needs correction in the US also.
Hmm.
So I was not sure how these things are going to play out in the market.
So, like I said, the U.S. situation and the Japanese situation is totally different. In a sense that the yen market is not at all a global market. It's very domestic market. Whereas the U.S., as you know, India, are using U.S. government bond as a way of carrying your FX reserve, and we Japanese are doing the same. So Elon Musk's discussion is of course, is a right decision, right discussion from the viewpoint of debt to GDP ratio, etc. But he misses one complete point. U.S. government bond is the only government bond that it has global power. So Japanese government bond cannot expand forever. That is for sure. But under the democratic system, it will be very difficult to control this, fiscal issue. So the only ministry that is fighting against that trend is our Ministry of Finance. But Ministry of Finance is very, very unpopular for that reason. So I'm not that optimistic about the controllability of Japanese government bond market in the near term. But U.S. market, on the other hand, has a different characteristic from the viewpoint of U.S. government bonds being global currency or global tools, if you will, to carry your value. So that's my a little bit longer version of my answer to you, sir.
We have Mr. Chandra. Mr. Chandra, would you like to ask your own question?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Yamamoto, for the very insightful talk. My question is regarding, what you mentioned, the US dollar being the global reserve currency. Very recently, on a session on Russia calling, an investor summit in Russia, the president of Russian Federation, Mr. Vladimir Putin, mentioned that there is a nearly $10 trillion of unaccounted dollars printed. So my question is that, Mr. Donald Trump, the incoming president, he made a very uncharacteristic statement threatening the BRICS countries of tariff if they try to create an alternative to the US dollar. Now, Japan is a very traditional and a finance, kind of superpower with very conservative fiscal management. So how do we create an alternative? How do we overcome the US threat? That's my one question, that in the recent decades, the unaccountability of US dollar as a global reserve currency. The second is the historical injustice, historical inequity. For example, India claims about 45 trillion pounds from UK that's been historically looted and plundered. So do we get a great reset in the finances so that we usher towards a world which is more equitable, inclusive, and fair and just?
Thank you, sir. First of all, for your question. So I understand your first part very clearly. Okay, and the BRICS and all the other alternative, way of creating, choice other than U.S. Government bonds as a global currency. That part I understand. But what's your second question?
The second question is regarding the historic injustice. For example, India claims that the British looted and plundered more than 45 trillion pounds of gold reserves and various other, ways through colonization. So how can historical injustice be reset in a time when we have a digital public infrastructure, when we have far better, transparency into fiscal management, and we have lots more data? So can we, rather than developing countries begging the developed countries for climate fund, we have a climate ecological crisis, we have, wars flaring up to nuclear, points. So can we create a global fund which also, takes into account the historic loot and plunder by colonial powers over the past, nearly 200, 300 years? That's the second part of the question.
I see. Now I think I understand your question, second part. It's almost like a discussion that we had at COP29. And you are proposing an alternative path. So got it. So first part, I'm not very optimistic about, any endeavor to create, meaningful option other than the U.S. government bond as a global currency. That's my answer to your first question. I know that BRICS these days are trying to do such a thing, and even Donald Trump can understand the implication of that. So he will do everything to prevent that becoming reality, and they have a power to do that. Like I said, that this 133 trillion US dollar fixed income market is a fact, and US controls 48% of that is a fact. So there's a past dependency for everything, and this global regime. I'm 59 years old. I don't think I will see the different regime during my lifetime. That's my first question. And second part is somewhat related but different question. For the climate challenge and everything, how a country like India can finance those needs. That part, I don't need a fancy answer. You can attract the asset owners' money very easily if you change your mindset. That's my whole point. Like I said, your policy tool, like NIIF, got a huge attention from the global pension funds. Okay, so there's no need for you to talk about the historical facts, or UK did what to your great nation when kind of discussion. It's irrelevant. You don't have to go for that path. Rather, you can expand your private asset market, and you can attract with your great prospective future for your great nation. I'm very optimistic your capability to attract meaningful capital from asset owners globally. That's my version. I stop here. I hope I'm answering your questions.
Yeah, so my related question to both the first and second part is that
Yes.
US is a fading and a dying superpower. It no longer holds any moral authority to sanction. Why can't rest of the world unite and counter sanction instead of yielding to the US threat and bullying? Number one. Number two is that I'd like to point out a book by a Japanese art historian, Kakuzo Okakura. It's called Ideals of the East, and it starts with a line called Asia is one, and it talks about how the Asian philosophy leads to the ultimate and the universal, to the ends, whereas West is still stuck in the means. And we see that West has come to a point of self-destruction. As far as your point of NIIF is concerned, our natural ecosystems are already over leveraged. So, for example, even a Japanese assisted bullet train is stuck for years and years. It already has a huge cost overrun and time overrun. So my point is that, to be very realistic and very pragmatic, I think we need to literally get our heads together on a very different course of development and financialization than what we have had in the past several decades. And I think, to its credit, Japan has done very well to slow down, even though we may like to call it the lost decades. But I think Japan has very sensibly, and I think there's also very popular book as a critique of capitalism in Japan. I don't exactly remember the name of the book, but it's a very popular one, which talks about how the slowing down of Japan has allowed it to stabilize and maintain a quality of life, even with much lower birth rates and a far greater dependent population. So I think the time has come to move from a Western paradigm to an Eastern paradigm, which talks about frugality where everyone wins, and Russia looking more towards East, also gives us the military counterweight to NATO and the US bullying. So I think with the wars flaring up in Palestine, Israel, in Ukraine, in Syria, I think we have come to a point where financial thinkers should also look out of the box and consider far different options than what we have done so far. That's just my
Thank
summation.
you. I don't know,
So,
Osamu,
Dr.
if you want to react to this, because I want also Dr. Shishir Shrotia to ask
Yeah.
his question.
Can I ask the question first, sir?
Yeah, please.
So, sir, basically, I wanted to, I have sent a link also where the Indian bond market size is as of now 2.59 trillion USD. That's the figure which is quoted in the recent news item. The other thing I just wanted to ask Dr. Yamamoto that is he aware about our agency called IFSCA? IFSCA is International Financial Services uh, Center Authority, which has been established by Government of India at Gift City, Ahmedabad. So basically, it's a unified authority to work on, regulate, and financial products and services, etc. And it's a wonderful place for it gives you all the facilities for policy making in the sense that regulatory environment is also flexible. It's a kind of a sandbox approach which the government has developed, and it offers a lot of investor protection, ease of doing business, and many other things. So as part of the Unison Capital, I will request him to first look at IFSCA if he is not aware about IFSCA. And my second question to him is that IFSCA is facilitating large facilitating a large sort of investment for India's shipping as well as airline sector. So I'm talking about shipping, and just to give him a little bit of insight into our shipping industry, we pay close to 100 billion USD as freight charges annually. 100 billion is the figure. So there is a large requirement, being a demand-driven economy, there's a large requirement of financing shipping here, ship leasing, ship financing, ship ownership, and shipbuilding. So I invite Dr. Yamamoto and the other private equity investors to come to FSCA and invest not only in shipping but find other avenues which are absolutely growth oriented in India and which will give them very high returns. So that's my submission.
Dr. Yamamoto, now that everybody has heard that you come to India often and frequently, they are offering you an investment opportunity. Is that right, Shishir?
That's right, sir. That's right. And IFSC is slightly a new concept, and it is flexible, and it's very friendly to the investors. So I would request him to take advantage of it, and in case required, you can take my help and Dr. Charan Singh's help to reach them out.
Right. Okay. And Shishir, do share your number and details with me. Like to be in touch with you.
Yes.
I think both Chandra, Vikas, and Shishir have brought some new points. And Osamu, Dr. Osamu, if you want to react to it.
Yes, sir. So instead of reacting to doctor's question one by one, let me give you my wild idea. Okay, and a key is how to finance your capital needs for the next 10 to 20 years. Okay, and I'm a private sector investor, so my discussion will be very financial. Okay. So Japan has a huge pension asset. I told you that. And India has a huge capital needs for the infrastructure, including the bullet train discussion that one of your participants raised. But I'm not talking about the shipping. I'm not talking about the a specific sector. I'm talking about your infrastructure needs. So I know how to finance this from Japanese asset, pension funds. Dr. Singh, Japan's interest rate is still very low, and you know that. And GPIF has a infinite investment horizon. That means what? They only need, let's say, 4% of a fixed annual return from your from any fixed income products. 4% would be ideal. 3.5% would be acceptable. Okay. Whereas in India, because your macro market is growing, you can easily produce, let's say 18% INR based, infrastructure return or higher. Okay. So the question is how to hedge FX part. That's the only big thing that you and we have to work together. And the reason why I'm here today is long time back I was invited by Dr. S.K. Singh, and S.K. Singh was in your G20. He wrote a report together with Larry Summers about how to reorganize MDBs and central banks for that matter. So my suggestion is, okay, asset allocators like a GPIF is a public figure. And you have RBI, and we have Bank of Japan. And they have a longer term swap agreement of JPY and INR. So if you have a willingness, Dr. Singh, my point is you can convert let's say 18% INR based longer term infrastructure return, okay, into 3.5% or 4% JPY based long term fixed income return for the Japanese pension fund. If that happens, that's a win-win for everybody. But there's no such market like hedging FX, JPY versus INR for next 20 years. You know that, I know that. Commercially, it's very, very costly to hedge that FX. So this is where your government and our government can play. That's my view. Okay, if you can create something like this, you can do that with any asset allocators. North America, Canada, they will, do this. But with, in particular, between Japan and India, because our Japan's interest rate is very, very low, and your economy is growing at 7 to 8% per annum annually, there's an arbitrage opportunity for the next 10 years. So things like that, I would like to continue to discuss with you. Okay, for this kind of thing, I'm not talking about as an investor. This is not a private sector deal, no way. But as a humble private sector investor, I can sometimes dream of, Mr. Singh, the solution like this. Okay, so I stop here.
I hope you have a very good.
Yeah, I hope I'm making my point clear.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
This is public discussion, and
Yep.
I'm talking about the public sector and the private sector collaboration.
Yep.
And
I totally
somebody
agree.
somebody said we need out of box solution. One that I gave you, that's out of box. It includes asset owners and central banks. Okay. But I cannot think of any reason why we cannot work like that.
So this can happen at if we get involved with IFSCA, and this can be facilitated there, sir, Dr. Charan Singh.
No, it can be facilitated at different points. One is, I think the central banks will have a bigger role to play. I'm going to discuss this with NK Singh. I'm meeting him next week. The author of Larry Summer and NK Singh, that combined multilateral report. I'm meeting him next week. I will send him this recording also today and tell him to ponder over it. But I think the two central banks will have to play a prominent role, because the G6 market is controlled by and managed by the central bank of our country. And I think your G6 and JGBs, Japanese government bonds, are also handled by the Bank of Japan. So I think they will have to play a role. They'll have to come in, and then we'll have to talk to the asset managers. And basically the pension funds in our country, provident funds, will
Sorry, Dr. Singh, I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I'm
Am I
sorry,
audible?
I think there was a network problem at our end or somewhere. And so I do not know why this happened twice today. I apologize. It's never happened. We have done so many webinars and this never happened today. It's happening. I apologize for that. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank the participants to be with us. We have tried a new time slot today and still we had about 45 people join us. I think that's very good in this time slot. And I also want to thank you for your idea. And I'm looking forward to meeting you in your next visit. You said you're here in 2 weeks. So I'd like to meet you and interact with you. The suggestion of yours, which you have made, I'd like to take it further. And I'll keep you informed how it is developing. By the time you come and when we meet, I'll share with you what's the development on it. But I think it's a very good idea. With that, let me conclude this session and let me introduce you to the next session. We'll have the recording by tomorrow noon. Next Friday, in our traditional time slot, 4 to 5 p.m., we are going to have a book review by Arvind Panagaria, where he has spoken, he has come out with a new book, as we all know, on Nehruvian economic policy. In this new book, the Nehru Development Model, as he has called it, it's a thick book, about 300 pages. We will be having Dr. Arvind Panagaria with us discussing about his book, and most probably I'll be the discussant along with him. So we will share and present the new book which Arvind Panagaria has brought out on the Nehruvian model of growth. So I would welcome you for that. As I mentioned, in a few weeks from now, we are going to have Professor Lipsky, who was with the IMF as the Deputy Managing Director. And then we are going to have Nobel Laureate in February and Nobel Laureate in March. I'll keep you apprised of all the dates as they come closer. With this, once again, thank you very much, Dr. Yamamoto, for being with us, sharing your research with us, and to the participants. Have a great weekend and see you next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.